Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutrition detective of the vitamin A detox program at nutritiondetective.work and nutritionrestored.com. And today we are going to be going over how vitamin A causes infertility, sexual dysfunction, and birth defects. And we will be covering all the research on this. And if you're interested in the links, the slideshow will be down in the comments. So you can find that, it's accessible, and you can click on those links and you can follow all the research, okay? So let's jump in. What if a so-called vitamin that's actually a well-researched toxin known to cause birth defects was the root cause of today's infertility epidemic and sexual dysfunction epidemic and all the rest? That's the question. Now, one other thing you need to know is as we go over this and you see and you realize that the research shows unequivocally, as the World Health Organization will say, you'll see, that it's a poison to birth and fertility. The only question you should be asking yourself after that is not how much of it is a vitamin and we need, it's how little of it is still a poison, okay? Something cannot be a vitamin and a poison. That doesn't make any sense. So let's move on. First, a quick overview of the research we're going to cover of the general effects on fertility-related issues in humans and animals. So we have lack of libido, increased sterility, decreased fertility, sexual organ dysfunction, negative hormonal impacts, increase in miscarriages, also known as spontaneous abortion in the research, birth defects of multiple types in multiple body systems, and vitamin A toxicity being spread from the mother to the baby through breast milk, okay? So first thing, for those of you who are watching this, whether it's men or women, are you dealing with any of these issues? There is information on how to address these things at the end of this video. Little postscript here, it's hundreds of times cheaper than conventional fertility treatments, and you get healthier along the way. Conventional fertility treatments, those of you may already know, run into the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and they make you take tons of medications through the process, which I've never heard of pharmaceutical medications making anybody healthier. So think about that. We can get you healthier and fix the problem, or you can go and take a bunch of medications that may get you through the infertility that you have, but then you end up less healthy at the end. Everybody makes their choices, right? First, we're going to do a review of things I've covered in other videos, but I want to cover them again today for those of you who might be watching me for the first time. We're going to go over how natural and synthetic vitamin A are exactly the same in terms of toxicity and problems they cause. We're going to go over the real research evidence proven of the worldwide epidemic of vitamin A toxicity. We're going to go over how serum retinol, the blood test your doctor might do if you ask them, can you see if I'm vitamin A toxic? We're going to go over how that doesn't show the toxicity in your liver, which is the main problem area. And then we're going to go over how any vitamin A you absorb turns into retinoic acids. And it is known in the research that retinoic acids are what causes birth defects and all these problems. Okay? So first, we're going to go over how natural and synthetic vitamin A are the same. The science shows this fact over and over and over, and there are people out on the internet and treating people in my field, people who shouldn't even be counseling others on nutrition, continually saying that natural vitamin A doesn't cause toxicity, only supplemental does. And then when you present them with arguments of then why do people die or get very sick or go banana bonkers like schizophrenic crazy when they eat polar bear liver? Why is polar bear liver considered dangerous when it's natural vitamin A? And then natural or synthetic vitamin A is the real boogeyman, okay? It doesn't make any sense. I have videos on my YouTube channel and my other video channels of how liver has been shown in multiple ways to cause toxicity when people eat too much of it from multiple different types of animals, fish, and sled dogs when guys were starving in the Arctic, and from beef, and from every animal you can imagine. I've got the research showing that it has made people very, very sick before. And then I have a whole video on cod liver oil and all the demonstrated toxicity that it's caused too. So let's get past the natural and synthetic vitamin A's are different somehow. They're not. Here we go. This book, I have the link to this PDF of this book. It's more of a book of studies because Rodal, the guy who did all this, did many studies on the toxicity of vitamin A and put them all into this one book. And you can find that PDF at that link. It is called Hypervitaminosis A, a study of the effect of excess of vitamin A in experimental animals. Gosh, he was looking at the whole thing. So, quote, from the present investigations, it is evident that identical effects were obtained in rats by giving livers rich in vitamin A, liver oils, fish oil, cod liver oil, and highly purified and concentrated vitamin A preparations when given in equivalent amounts with regard to the vitamin A content. The symptoms increased with increasing doses of vitamin A, and no ill effect whatever was observed in rats given liver oil where the vitamin A had been destroyed. Finally, none of the fractions of the liver oil, other than the vitamin A, had any ill effect on rats. These findings are in agreement with the results of previous investigations. Furthermore, excess of pure crystalline vitamin A alcohol, it's called retinol, and crystalline vitamin A acetate, that's also known as retinol acetate, have been found to produce the same toxic effect in rats as natural sources of vitamin A. Pretty straightforward, right? It is the same. We're going to continue on that same paper. Quote, there appears to be no doubt, therefore, that excess of vitamin A is toxic and that the ill effect observed in rats given excess of the vitamin A concentrates used in the present experiments is due to the vitamin A itself. From the present investigations, it may further be concluded that excess of vitamin A is also toxic to mice, guinea pigs, rabbits, and cockerels, end quote. The same evidence of natural and synthetic vitamin A being equally toxic has also been found in multiple human studies, but to save time, I'm not going to cover those. I have another video of that on my channel. You would want to watch that one too because they say the same thing over and over, and we'll go over other mentions of how dietary vitamin A causes problems in the research later in this presentation. Now we're going to go over the real current epidemic of vitamin A toxicity, and this has been going on for about probably 50 years. So first, is there a real universal or worldwide epidemic of vitamin A toxicity? Here's a recent study. Serum retinol esters are positively correlated with analyzed total liver vitamin A reserves collected from US adults at the time of death. Quote, cadaver liver samples were analyzed to explore vitamin A status biomarker associations in US adults. I'm going to take a break here. The gold standard of assessing vitamin A toxicity is not serum retinol. It never was. It's not retinol binding protein in the blood. It's not beta carotene in the blood. It's a biopsy of the liver where they analyze a chunk of the liver and see how much vitamin A is stored in it. The second best is when they measure what are called serum retinol esters, all of them, which we'll get into later. Okay, this is the gold standard test on Americans. Okay, they measured their blood. At the time of death, they measured their blood for vitamin A, and they also analyzed their liver content. Okay, quote, 9 subjects, 33%, had hypervitaminosis A, which is qualified as greater than 1.0 micromole of vitamin A per gram of liver. End quote. They had 27 subjects. It's hard for them to get, bodies for this, but they had 27 subjects at the time of death. They had a mixed selection of people who had died of natural causes, people who had died of chronic disease, people who had died of accidents. They were trying to get them from all groups. So out of 27 Americans, 9 of them diagnosably vitamin A toxic in their liver. Okay, continuing. Quote, the World Health Organization, WHO, often uses a 20% prevalence to define a severe public health concern, end quote. What they really mean by a severe public health concern, the other word for that would be an epidemic. Okay. So we have 33% of the Americans in the study that tested positive for diagnosable vitamin A, and the World Health Organization sets the bar at 20% or above. Continuing, quote, chronic vitamin A toxicity can occur from ingestion of moderate levels, not high, not supplements, moderate levels of preformed vitamin A for months or years. It is said that a person eating the RDA, the recommended daily allowance of vitamin A, will have at least a year's worth of vitamin A stored in their liver. So if you are out there and you've been deceived into thinking that taking tons of vitamin A will make you better, and you're taking 5 times the RDA, 10 times the RDA, you're going to have decades worth, possibly a decade worth of vitamin A stored in your liver and your other tissues. For most people, it's years worth. For some people, it's probably a decade worth, and we've looked at that research and we've done the calculations. So if you can get it from moderate levels of vitamin A for months, what if you did a lower amount for years? It all adds up. This is a problem of accumulation. If you are not getting rid of vitamin A as fast as you are putting it in, you will accumulate it more and more and more. That's what happens. Finally, end quote, or sorry, the ending of the quote, I should say. Here we go. The hypervitaminotic A concentrations discovered in these subjects would not have been identified by currently applied serum indicators. So what they're saying, end quote. What they're saying is that they measured their blood and they measured their liver, and that their blood was fine and that their liver was toxic. So when you go to your doctor who doesn't know how to analyze vitamin A at all and doesn't know the limitations of the test, and they say your serum retinol is fine, or they even try to tell you that it's low, as we'll go into further studies, that has nothing to do with what's in your liver. Nothing. Okay? We'll get to more on that later. So how much vitamin A toxicity is happening worldwide? We're going to go into that in this slide and the next one. Here's the paper, Overlapping Vitamin A Interventions in the US, Guatemala, Zambia, and South Africa. Case studies. So here's the first quote. This is not a quote, sorry. Here's the first part. This is a repeat of the American study that they included. Liver biopsies, the gold standard test from 27 US adult cadavers, revealed a 33% prevalence of hypervitaminosis A. That means 1 out of every 3 of the Americans they tested were vitamin A toxic, technically an epidemic. Okay, continuing. In a study of 133 Zambian children, Africa, which is thought to be the center of vitamin A deficiency, right? 59% of those children were diagnosable with hypervitaminosis A. That was probably by the serum retinol, which is scary because if they're that high on serum retinol, it's really bad. 16% of those children had more than 5% of their total serum vitamin A as retinol esters, which is above the toxicity level when you look at that test. And that's a legit test. 6 out of 10 kids in Zambia were vitamin A toxic. Okay, these are recent studies too. In 40 South African children who frequently consumed liver, all you nose to tail people and you liver lovers, they frequently consumed liver, 72.5% of them had more than 5% of their total serum vitamin A as retinol esters, which means 7 out of the 10 kids there are vitamin A toxic. Coincidentally, all 3 of these countries encourage high carotenoid consumption. Eat the rainbow. They have mandatory fortified foods. Examples here in the US, we have fortified dairy. And even if you don't fortify your dairy, there's still plenty of vitamin A in there. They have a high percent of supplement users. Can you say Western countries? Or targeted supplementation to preschool children. Think of the African countries there. Companies or groups like the Vitamin Angels giving free vitamin A out with their vaccines to the children of these countries. 2 of them so far are African countries. Now we're going to review some past studies for vitamin A toxicity. Now I dug into the research really deeply to find these studies that looked at gold standard liver biopsy studies of vitamin A levels. Okay, cadavers. Generally, they tried to get ones that had died from accidents and chronic disease. So they weren't trying to get just one or the other. These numbers, what I did was I took the current number for vitamin A toxicity and I applied it retroactively to these studies to find out how many people were vitamin A toxic back then. In Singapore in 1988, so these are people living in Singapore of different genetic backgrounds. Okay, so Chinese people living in Singapore, 19.1% of them were diagnosably vitamin A toxic. Indian Singaporeans, 13.6%. So these are not above the 20%, but that's still more than 1 in 10 or close to 2 in 10. Malaysians living in Singapore, 24%, 1 in 4. Caucasian plus Eurasian Singaporeans, they were basically saying white people living in Singapore, 40% of them. Then we go to London, England in 1977, 31% of them diagnosably vitamin A toxic. Washington, D.C., more Americans, 24.2% of them vitamin A toxic. New York City in 1970, 10%. Ghana, Africa in 1967, and I have 2 studies showing this. Same year, different authors, 50% of them were diagnosably vitamin A toxic. 50%, highest of all the countries. New Zealand, 1962, 27.9%. Again, remember that the World Health Organization uses a 20% prevalence to deem it a severe public health concern, or another word we can use is epidemic. It is legitimately happening, and the blood tests, as they just said, that we use, that medicine uses, tries to use, won't show it. So now we're going to go into that. We're going to demonstrate how serum retinol, the only test your doctor probably knows how to run on vitamin A, doesn't show toxicity. So why isn't the blood vitamin A testing, which is serum retinol technically, showing us this epidemic of toxicity that's happening right in front of us? Remember that one about the US cadavers where they showed in the blood, no toxicity in the blood, severely toxic in the liver. Okay, so let's take this quote. Role of fat-soluble vitamins A and D in the pathogenesis of influenza, a new perspective, by a great researcher, Anthony Mawson. Quote, serum retinol concentrations, normally 1 to 3 micromoles per liter. Here in America and other countries, we would use the range 28 to 84 micrograms per deciliter, and that's a huge range. That's bigger than LabCorp uses, just FYI. Do not reflect hepatic vitamin A concentrations over a wide range of liver values, since the secreted retinol binding protein, RBP, is under homeostatic control. Thus, serum retinol concentrations vary little despite major alterations in vitamin A intake. Case reports of hypervitaminosis A often show serum retinol concentrations within normal limits, indicating that serum retinol is not a valid measure of vitamin A status during toxicity. Okay, this is just saying everything I just said. How much or how little vitamin A you eat doesn't really change your blood levels that much. Weird, right? It does, your blood vitamin A, your serum retinol, doesn't reflect what's in your liver at all. Okay. Again, we're going to go to another paper from Mr. Mawson. Gulf War illness, unifying hypothesis for a continuing health problem. Quote, liver damage is associated with reduced serum retinol levels due to impaired hepatic mobilization with increased liver enzyme levels. End quote. So what he's saying is that if your liver is damaged and it can't get rid of the vitamin A, so you still have tons of vitamin A in your liver, but you're not able to help it escape. Your liver will build up, but your blood levels can go down. Your blood vitamin A is hardly reflective of how much toxicity you have in your liver and your other tissues. Okay? This is the reality of what the research says. You can go check these references. The key thing to know is that your blood vitamin A can be normal or even low when your liver is absolutely overflowing. And one of the things you can use logically to look at this is you can go and look at, go Google images of fatty liver, or NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Look at the color of the liver in those. It is yellow. What do you think yellow, what do you think we're talking about right now that is very yellow? We're talking about vitamin A. Okay, just when they use a retinoic acid, a vitamin A chemical peel to melt the skin off people's faces, they call it a yellow peel. Okay, that's what the liver's got too much of. Okay, so is there a valid blood test for vitamin A toxicity then? Because you're not going to get a liver biopsy. There is a test for it, but you can't get it. I can't get it. Nobody can get it. From that same paper from Mr. Mawson, Gulf War illness, unifying hypothesis for a continuing health problem, quote, an accepted indicator of retinoid toxicity is percent retinol esters, end quote. Now we mentioned that test a couple of times in showing toxicity in South Africa and showing toxicity in Ghana, African countries. Again, we had 3 African countries, Zambia, Ghana, and South Africa. But supposedly, Africa is so deficient in vitamin A. Why might they be thinking this? Why might they be making this mistake? Because they're measuring serum retinol, which doesn't show liver toxicity. When they measure either biopsies or retinol esters, serum retinol esters, and I mean all of them, they see very different stories, okay? So when we're talking about the test that's available, it is the percent retinol esters test. And when I say percent retinol esters, some people out on the internet who fancy themselves experts will say, oh yeah, you could go get that from this one lab. It's called the retinol palmitate test. There are at least 7, why can we not use this? Because there's at least 7 significant retinol esters in human bloodstreams at any one time, at least 7 from the research. You can't just test one and expect that to be representative. If I recall correctly, I think retinol palmitate was somewhere between 30 to 50% of the total retinol esters in the blood. So if people get this test and they think, oh, I got this test, which this one guy on the internet said is legit, it's not legit. It doesn't show you anything. It doesn't show you enough. And it's not going to help you. So the only place you can get percent serum retinol esters test is in research. And that's going to be hard for you to get. So in summary, your doctor giving you a serum retinol or blood vitamin A test tells you nothing about whether you are toxic or not. I've probably looked at more serum retinol tests than just about anybody out there. And I can tell you there's only so much information you can get out of it. You can get a little bit of information, but not much. Let me give you a quick example of what we can do when we start getting the body to release vitamin A. So here's an interesting thing. Some of the very sickest people who have come to me with vitamin A toxicity, the very sickest people have had the lowest serum retinol. Do I run this test? Yes, because it's the only test out there. But they've had some of the lowest serum retinol. Let me tell you what happens when we start to get them healthier and their liver starts dumping the vitamin A because it can finally let go of it. One gentleman, serum retinol of 25 to start. We get him going on the vitamin A detox and we get his liver clearing out that vitamin A. 3 months later, he ran a serum retinol test. He's not eating vitamin A, okay? Understand this. His serum retinol went up to 52. 3 months later, he runs another serum retinol test. It went up to 125. He was now the most toxic person in terms of serum retinol that I've ever seen. What does this mean? You remember how I just showed you on that other slide when there's liver damage, the liver can't get rid of vitamin A, so it builds up in the liver and the serum retinol goes down. I'm telling you that some of the sickest people I've seen have had the lowest vitamin A levels. And as an example with this one gentleman, we start doing what he needs to do to get rid of the vitamin A, and then his serum retinol starts going up. Is that a bad thing? No, it was stuck in his liver. It shows that your serum retinol doesn't reflect what's in your liver. Okay? Next, we're going to go over how absorbed vitamin A turns into retinoic acids. And these retinoic acids are the same things as poisonous, known retinoic acid pharmaceutical drugs. So from the paper, in vitro metabolism of 3 major isomers of retinoic acid in rats. So people say, well, rats aren't humans. We'll get to that. Pay attention to the bold, the highlighted ones. Retinol, retinal, all trans retinoic acid, 13-cis retinoic acid, and 9-cis retinoic acid. I want you to notice at the top, retinol and retinal eventually end up as these 3 things, one of these 3 things. And they might just be spinning around in that little circle there. So for the people who go, well, rats aren't humans, do rats and humans have similar vitamin A metabolism? From the paper, carotenoid and retinoid metabolism, insights from isotope studies. Quote, the kinetic behavior of retinol metabolism in the blood appears to be similar for humans and rats. The model developed for humans, which is based on much less evidence, appears to be similar. So basically, why would we study rats to try to make inferences to humans if rats weren't similar enough to humans, right? Isn't that why we study them? We do animal studies so we don't have to do the same thing on humans. So yes, the rat studies are close enough to human studies to be able to say that the same things happen, okay? I took that pathway, took out the extra stuff, made it a little cleaner, added carotenoids where carotenoids come into the picture, like beta carotene. So retinol, just so you know, there's actually retinol esters above retinol. Retinol esters are what you store in your liver and your fat. Retinol esters are what you eat when you eat liver or cod liver oil or dairy. That is the stored form of vitamin A in animals. It is not retinol. There's very little retinol in animal vitamin A. It's mostly retinol esters because retinol is really toxic by itself. Retinol esters are safer, okay? So anyway, retinol esters feed into retinol, which is an alcohol. Retinol feeds into retinal, which is an aldehyde. It's also called retinaldehyde. And so here already, some of you who understand a little bit about chemistry start going, alcohols and aldehydes? That doesn't sound very good for us. Those generally aren't good things for us. You know, formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, benzaldehyde. You don't want these things. These are not good for you. Another mistake that people make is they go, oh, one beta carotene can turn into retinol. Okay, one beta carotene, when it's chopped into two pieces, turns into two retinaldehydes, retinal. Okay, it doesn't turn into retinol. I'm going to tell you, all these people out there who are trying to talk like they know vitamin A metabolism are wrong, and they're not looking at the literature. And I have this in my other videos. So retinal irreversibly turns into all trans retinoic acid, or ATRA. All trans retinoic acid, when it's given to people topically or in a pill form, it is called tretinoin or retin-A, the same molecules. Then we have over to the right, we have 13-cis-retinoic acid. When they give that to people in pills, it's called isotretinoin or Accutane or Roaccutane. And then both of those can feed into 9-cis-retinoic acid, which when it's given to people as a drug is called alitretinoin. Now, I want to ask you if you honestly believe that if a chemist was analyzing blood, whether somebody took synthetic retinol or they took cod liver oil, if a chemist is going to be able to tell the difference between all trans retinoic acid, 13-cis-retinoic acid, or 9-cis-retinoic acid that came from a natural source or a synthetic source, they can't tell any difference. And as you'll see, science doesn't claim any difference. Okay? This is really important. So what have we established? We've established that natural and synthetic vitamin A have exactly the same toxicity in the human body, and this has been shown in animals and humans. We've shown that there is a very real epidemic of vitamin A toxicity worldwide. We've shown that the standard serum retinol test will not show the liver's actual level of vitamin A toxicity. We have shown that vitamin A that is absorbed turns into retinoic acids. These retinoic acids include 13-cis-retinoic acid, also known as Accutane or Roaccutane, also known as isotretinoin. It also turns into all trans retinoic acid, also known as retin-A, also known as tretinoin. It turns into 9-cis-retinoic acid, also known as alitretinoin. Now, this is going to be all I cover on this one specifically, but I got this quote. Alitretinoin is an orally and topically active, naturally occurring retinoic acid with anti-neoplastic, chemopreventive, teratogenic, and embryotoxic activities, end quote. So I'm going to translate those things. Chemopreventive, they're saying it has a chemotherapy effect. Do you know that there are people out there, researchers and doctors, trying to use retinoic acids as chemotherapy? Do we tend to associate chemotherapy as being good for people? Chemotherapy is generally, the idea behind it is you're using chemicals to try to poison cells, and you are hoping that the cancer cells die off before the person does. That's chemotherapy in a nutshell. So they're using retinoic acids. You can look up isotretinoin chemotherapy, tretinoin chemotherapy, alitretinoin chemotherapy. It's all there. So your body, when you eat vitamin A, is making chemotherapy inside of it, okay? Teratogenic means birth defect inducing. And embryotoxic means fetal death. It can kill the fetus, the developing baby, okay? This is not good. So we already know, we've established birth defects and killing babies from alitretinoin, which is one of the things that vitamin A turns into. We'll get into the other ones as we go. So what happens to animals with regards to fertility, sexual function, and infant mortality, or babies dying after they're born, from vitamin A? This is a high school chemistry book on vitamin A. The link, you can find the link there. This is a lethal dose table. Now, so what you're seeing here is you might go, well, why is a vitamin on a lethal dose table? Go and try to find lethal doses for other vitamins. You're going to have a real tough time finding it. A lethal dose is the amount of an ingested substance that kills 50% of a test sample, okay? So the very last one on this list was vitamin A as retinol. The toxic response was convulsions, unconsciousness, reproductive toxin. So what do we know here that they're teaching high school chemistry kids? That vitamin A can be lethal and that it is a reproductive toxin. Now, in another study I went over about how vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist, we cover the research about how reducing vitamin A helps epilepsy, which would fall under convulsions, right? It's a variation of convulsions. Weird. All these things keep popping up. So what happens fertility-wise in rats given excess vitamin A? From that same book from Rodal, quote, the uterine hemorrhages in pregnant rats given excess of cod liver oil reported by Hartwell were reproduced by Moore and Wang, also in animals given halibut liver oil or vitamin A acetate. They interpreted this hemorrhage as a special manifestation of the general liability to hemorrhage in hypervitaminosis A, end quote. You need to remember the uterine hemorrhage that they're talking about here as a special manifestation of vitamin A toxicity and how that relates to birth problems, fertility problems, okay? Continuing from that book of studies, I should call it. Quote, from these observations, it is evident that a higher incidence of sterility was detected in the hypervitaminotic rats than in the normal animals. Hypervitaminotic rats were considerably less fertile than the normal control rats or rats given excess of vitamin A in subtoxic doses. This appears to be due to the hypervitaminotic condition of the mother. Pay attention to this. It'll come up with birth control later. The hypervitaminotic condition of the mother, since no improvement of fertility occurred when hypervitaminotic females were mated with normal males. On the other hand, there appeared to be absence of libido in rats given massive doses of vitamin A. In this connection, it may be of interest to note that Sherwood and collaborators reported that excess of carotene stops estrus and libido in rats, end quote. So we have carotenoids in there too. Back in 1936, when that study was done, do you think they were synthesizing carotenoids, or do you think they were getting carotenoids derived from food-based sources? It was food-based sources, okay? From the same book of studies by Rodal, quote, there is a very high mortality, death, of the young from hypervitaminotic mothers during the lactation period. And symptoms of hypervitaminosis A were observed in the young a few days after birth. This seems to indicate that the vitamin A transferred to the young through the mother's milk, which was found to contain huge amounts of vitamin A, is sufficient to cause hypervitaminosis A in the young, since the symptoms and postmortem findings observed in the young during the lactation period were identical with hypervitaminosis A, and no other findings were detected which could be taken as the cause of death. A rapid improvement took place in the young when the mother's milk was exchanged by ordinary basal diet in the one case examined, end quote. So what we need to know is that vitamin A toxicity in the breast milk can harm or even kill a newborn. Those of you out there who are trying to say that why would vitamin A be in breast milk if we didn't need it? You need to go and do some research on the toxins in breast milk. There's rocket fuel. There's all sorts of fat-soluble toxins, pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate. It's all there. Why, toxic metals? Why would all these things be in the breast milk if God didn't intend them to be there? Because women detox things through their breast milk. That's what they do. So, if you're a woman who noticed that your baby seemed to be born immediately okay, but then their health went south after you started nursing, probably vitamin A toxicity. Another interesting thing about the accumulation problem in pregnancy is that if you're a mother who had multiple children and you notice that the first child seemed to be the healthiest and each child after that seemed to have more and more health problems or got smaller, this is the vitamin A accumulation happening and affecting each of your children more. This is what it looks like. Okay? Vitamin A is not supposed to be in breast milk, and it can hurt or kill babies. The summary of anti-fertility effects of vitamin A in animals. We have uterine hemorrhage, which is bleeding. Remember this one. Uterus, bleeding. We have general hemorrhage. Increased sterility, decreased fertility, lack of libido, also from carotenoids. A lack of estrus. What is estrus? It is the regularly occurring period of sexual receptivity in most female mammals, except it doesn't happen in humans, except humans, during which ovulation occurs and copulation can take place. In animals, it is also known as an animal being in heat. Okay? Vitamin A stopped this. And increased death and sickness of newborns during nursing from a hypervitaminotic mother. Now, what happens to humans with regards to fertility, sexual function, and birth defects from vitamin A? In humans, uterine hemorrhages or bleeding is associated with worse pregnancy outcomes. From that previous quote I mentioned to remember, quote, they interpreted this uterine hemorrhage as a special manifestation of the general liability to hemorrhage in hypervitaminosis A, end quote. From the paper, the clinical significance of ultrasonographically detected subchorionic hemorrhages. Quote, the presence of an ultrasonographically detected subchorionic hemorrhage increases the risk of miscarriage, spontaneous abortion, stillbirth, abruptio placentae, and preterm labor. The presence of bleeding alone appears to increase the risk of miscarriage, end quote. That's one on humans. Another one, maternal and perinatal outcome in women with threatened miscarriage in the first trimester, a systematic review. Quote, women with threatened miscarriage had a significantly higher incidence of antepartum, which is before childbirth, hemorrhage due to placenta previa or antepartum hemorrhage of unknown origin when compared with those without first trimester bleeding. They were more likely to experience PPROM, stands for preterm pre-labor rupture of membranes, preterm delivery, and to have babies with intrauterine growth restriction. First trimester bleeding was associated with significantly higher rates of perinatal mortality, death of the fetus, and low birth weight babies, end quotes. Remember I said about kids getting small, kids getting less healthy. This is the pattern it follows. It's a disease of accumulation. So let's go into how vitamin A is known to cause birth defects, also known as a teratogen or teratogenic. Vitamin A in pregnancy, a narrative review. A review of studies. Quote, concern regarding the teratogenicity of vitamin A in humans began with the study conducted by Rothman et al., which concluded that a total vitamin A intake in pregnant women of over 15,000 units or more than 10,000 units in the form of supplements increases the risk of abnormalities in the development of neural crest tissues, on which 13-cis-retinoic acid has a teratogenic effect. Intakes of this order are not rare in the populations of high-income countries whose habitual diet contains higher levels of vitamin A than those recommended, and who often consume vitamin supplements and or foods rich in preformed vitamin A such as liver, end quote. Okay, total vitamin A intake in pregnant women of over 15,000 IUs a day. They mean diet plus supplements. Note how they're not leaving diet out. Diet's included. Or more than 10,000 units in the form of supplements. Because why can they say that? Because supplements are easy for people to say how much they've been taking. People can't say how much vitamin A they eat every day unless they eat the same things every day. Very hard to judge diet, so they had to go by a general thing. But supplements, you can be like, well, I take a 10,000 unit vitamin A pill every day. Okay. Note they said 13-cis-retinoic acid has a teratogenic effect. Remember, vitamin A that you absorb turns into 13-cis-retinoic acid, 9-cis-retinoic acid, and all trans-retinoic acid. We now have 2 of them that have been said to be birth defect inducing. Okay. Oh, and notice how they talk about the habitual diet containing high levels of vitamin A more than recommended. So when you see recommended daily allowance on vitamin A, they mean that's what they're recommending. And more than that can cause toxicity. Okay? How little is not a poison is the only question you should be asking. Continuing from that same paper, quote, there is little published information on the doses of vitamin A that pose a risk to women of childbearing age or at different stages of pregnancy. When the dose of preformed vitamin A is above 10,000 IU per day, there may be a potential risk of teratogenicity. There are reports of malformations in children when their mothers consume high doses of preformed vitamin A during pregnancy, greater than 25,000 units per day. These reports highlight anomalies of the urinary tract. The increase in preformed vitamin A, retinoic acid, in maternal blood during the first quarter of pregnancy is associated with miscarriage, spontaneous abortion, and congenital malformations involving the central nervous and cardiac systems. Thus, given the risk of cardiac malformation, an intake of retinol exceeding 10,000 IUs per day during pregnancy is considered a risk factor for fetal cardiopathy, absolute risk between 1% and 2%, suggesting an indication for fetal echocardiography during the prenatal period. Notice how they just said an intake of retinol over 10,000 IUs. They mean total intake. Okay, that's what they mean. They didn't say supplements. They said total intake. I mean, they say intake, which means all of it. Okay, you go and eat liver, take cod liver oil, drink a bunch of dairy, you're going to be very quickly over that. And the people who are hearing me say dairy, cod liver oil, eating liver, there's a very specific group out on the internet that advocates high intakes of all of those. Now we're going to go to the Teratology Society and what they say about vitamin A in pregnancy. The Teratology Society, this is a group of researchers and doctors, MDs, who study birth defects. And their main goal is to prevent birth defects, to figure out what causes birth defects and prevent them. So what do they say in their Teratology Society position paper, recommendations for vitamin A use during pregnancy? Which is funny that they have recommendations for vitamin A use during pregnancy because that's really not what they're saying. Quote, women in their reproductive years should be informed that the excessive use of vitamin A shortly before and during pregnancy could be harmful to their babies. The National Research Council's recommended dietary allowance for vitamin A during pregnancy is 1,000 retinol equivalents per day, which is equivalent to 3,300 IU as retinol, or 5,000 IU of vitamin A obtained from the typical American diet as a combination of retinol and carotenoids, e.g. example, beta-carotene. An average balanced diet contains approximately 7,000 to 8,000 IU of vitamin A derived from different sources, end quote. Hopefully you caught the problem there about the recommended amount and the typical daily diet amount. In case you missed that, the Birth Defect Preventing Society recommends that pregnant women should get less vitamin A than is in the average diet. Next question, well, women go, well, then should I take my prenatal? It's got vitamin A in it. Well, let's look at some prenatals out there. Because prenatals may be poisoning women with vitamin A. The number 2 selling prenatal vitamin on Amazon, Solimo prenatal vitamins and DHA. This is a screenshot from the product. Vitamin A as retinol acetate, 1,200 micrograms. So we're going to convert that to IUs. 1,200 micrograms equals 3,488 IUs. Remember what they just said before? Now the vitamin angels they give third world pregnant women this prenatal. This is a screenshot from that link. Vitamin A as palmitate or acetate, they give 800 micrograms retinol equivalents, which is 2,667 IUs per day. So now let's review these quotes that we just went over in light of those prenatals, okay? This is from one of the papers we just talked about. Quote, the National Research Council's recommended dietary allowance for vitamin A during pregnancy is 1,000 retinol equivalents per day, which is equivalent to 3,300 IUs as retinol, or 5,000 IUs of vitamin A obtained from the typical American diet as a combination of retinol and carotenoids, example, beta-carotene. An average balanced diet contains approximately 7,000 to 8,000 IU of vitamin A derived from different sources, end quote, from the other paper. Quote, concern regarding the teratogenicity of vitamin A in humans began with the study conducted by Rothman et al., which concluded that a total vitamin A intake in pregnant women of over 15,000 IU per day in the diet, or more than 10,000 IU in the form of supplements, increases the risk of abnormalities in the development of neural crest tissues on which 13-cis-retinoic acid has a teratogenic effect. Here's the part that you should be realizing and going, oh no, what are we doing? Intakes of this order are not rare in the populations of high-income countries whose habitual diet contains higher levels of vitamin A than those recommended, and who often consume vitamin supplements and or foods rich in preformed vitamin A, such as liver. So we're going to summarize that problem in case you weren't keeping track of the numbers. The American average balanced diet contains 7,000 to 8,000 IU of vitamin A. These prenatals I just went over, on average, I took basically a rough average of the two of them, contain 3,000 IUs of vitamin A. So what were they saying? The Teratology Society was saying that birth defect risk may increase at above 3,300 IU retinol or 5,000 IU of retinol plus carotenoids. Add up the American average balanced diet and the prenatal there. We're at 10,000 to 11,000 IUs. We are at double to triple the amount. From the paper, the other paper, birth defect risks are definitely increased at above 15,000 IU in the total diet, including supplements, or more than 10,000 IUs of supplements alone. So maybe you're out there trying to be healthy and you're following some of these groups that advocate massive vitamin A consumption, trying to claim that natural vitamin A can't hurt you. We don't want to look at the science that shows that they're the same thing. We just want to tell you what feels good to us because that's the way we've been doing it for a long time. So for those who add in lots of things like dairy, eggs, cod liver oil, or yellow or orange or red or dark green vegetables, you are heading for disaster, okay? Disaster in your health and your potential baby's health, if you can get pregnant. So what happens to men's sperm from vitamin A? Here we have a paper, meat intake in relation to semen quality and reproductive hormone levels among young men in Spain. Quote, the aim of this study was to assess the associations of intake of different types of meat with semen parameters and reproductive hormones in healthy young men. Total meat intake was unrelated to semen quality or reproductive hormone levels. Okay. In contrast, men who consumed organ meats had significantly lower progressive sperm motility and higher luteinizing hormone levels compared with men who did not consume organ meats. End quote. Okay, so that means their sperm didn't move around as well. That's not how you're going to get pregnant with sluggish sperm, okay? And higher luteinizing hormone levels. This means their hormonal system wasn't working as well, okay? Luteinizing hormone is the hormone from the brain that stimulates the testes to make testosterone. So what the body's saying by increasing that level, the testes are finding it harder to make testosterone. If vitamin A from organ meats, of which liver is the highest animal source of vitamin A that you could eat, if it's damaging the sperm, it's probably also damaging the parts of the testes that make testosterone. And then the brain up here in the hypothalamus, you got to crank up the LH, the luteinizing hormone, to signal the testes, we don't have enough testosterone, please make more. Okay? This is another example for those of you nose to tail eaters and liver lovers and carnivores. Natural vitamin A is exactly as toxic as synthetic vitamin A. So what does 13-cis-retinoic acid, also known as Accutane, but one of the retinoic acids that your body turns retinol into, what does it do to people's sexual function? So there is a group out there, rxrisk.org, that is trying to get warnings put on isotretinoin because it causes what they call post-retinoid sexual dysfunction. It happens so much, they gave it a name. Okay, and you can use the links on this slide and the next one to go there and look at it. Quoting, within the age group 12 to 17, isotretinoin was the most reported drug in the FAERS database for the following reactions. 31 reports of erectile dysfunction. That was 32% of the erectile dysfunction reports, okay? 11 reports, 27.5% of libido decreased. 5 reports, 38.5% of vulvovaginal dryness. 6 reports, 19.4% of testicular pain. 1 report, 100% of organic erectile dysfunction. 3 reports, 75% of retrograde ejaculation. That means the ejaculation was not going out, it was going backwards. Think of like reflux, stuff going backwards. 75% of those reports. This is 12 to 17-year-olds. Can you imagine the damage that's being done to their system? They're hardly even sexually functional yet. And we've just destroyed it. Another link from that rxrisk.org, this from the Citizen Petition, Sexual Side Effects of Isotretinoin. Quote, in May 2018, Healy et al. Published a study of 300 cases of enduring sexual dysfunction after stopping medications, including 54 involving isotretinoin. These were sourced from RxRisk's adverse event reporting system. I'm going to step aside here for a second. 300 cases of enduring sexual dysfunction from all medications that were reported. All medications that were reported, 54 of them were from isotretinoin, 13-cis-retinoic acid, which your body makes when you eat vitamin A. 54 out of 300, that's 1 out of every 6, basically. That's a lot. Continuing, isotretinoin was the most reported drug in the study. I just covered that. With 49 male subjects and 5 female, aged from 15 to 44 years. A breakdown of the reactions is shown in Table 3. You can go to that link and look at it. I highly suggest it. It's a long list. I went over the major ones. One subject reported that the duration of isotretinoin exposure had been less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks of taking a medication, a vitamin A medication, a retinoid medication, and he got enduring sexual dysfunction. Now, I can tell you that I now have a person who has come to me who took 1 pill of Accutane and got neuropathic problems, central nervous system and nerve problems. 1 pill. 1 pill. You go and take this stuff, you are playing with fire. Let's go into that. 9 reports involved adverse sexual effects that either emerged or became significantly worse upon stopping isotretinoin. So wait, if 54 total from isotretinoin, 9 of them got worse or started after they stopped isotretinoin. So that means 45 of them plus 9, 45 plus 9 equals 54. 45 of them sexual problems started when they got on isotretinoin, and 9 of them either got worse or started after they stopped it. So it would appear to be dangerous to both start and stop this form of vitamin A. 8 subjects reported that the time since stopping isotretinoin and still experiencing sexual side effects was over 10 years. including 4 over 20 years. That's 15% of the cases and 7.5% of the cases, respectively. 1 out of every 6, the sexual side effects were still there 10 years later. And 1 out of every 12-ish was still there after 20 years. Apparently, this stuff does nasty stuff to your system, and you make it when you eat vitamin A. From the paper, vitamin A and clefting, putative biological mechanisms. A lot of people, they've had kids with cleft lip, cleft palate, tongue ties, stuff like that, lip ties. Tongue ties and lip ties are basically just less intense variations of the same things that cause cleft lip and cleft palate, okay? From here, the quote, excess vitamin A can cause congenital malformations such as spina bifida and cleft palate. Therefore, preventive nutritional strategies are required. In general, high doses of vitamin A affect palatogenesis, the creation of the palate, through interference with cell proliferation and growth factors such as transforming growth factor B and platelet-derived growth factor. The effects of lower doses of vitamin A need to be investigated in greater depth in order to improve public health recommendations. In general, retinoic acid seems to act through interference with growth factor signaling in all stages of palatogenesis. The exact interactions of retinoic acid with relevant signaling pathways in palatogenesis needs to be investigated in more depth. Further research should focus specifically on the effects of slight nutritional overexposure to vitamin A to improve the dietary recommendations to pregnant women or those who want to become pregnant, thereby reducing the risk of cleft palate in offspring, end quote. Let me tell you what these researchers were basically saying with the effects of lower doses of vitamin A and slight nutritional overexposure of vitamin A. It's exactly what I was saying before. We know this is a poison. We know this causes cleft lip, cleft palate, and other malformations. What they're saying is we need to figure out how low vitamin A has to be. Since we know it's a poison, how low does it have to be to not cause the poisonous effects? This is what they're saying. They're trying to be very gentle about it because they probably don't want to lose their research money. But that's what they're saying. Once you know it's a poison, the only thing you should be worried about is what do I really need to get below on this poison to not have problems? Think about mercury. Think about lead. Mercury and lead are out there. What seems to be a low enough dose that it doesn't cause problems? Well, when you think about vitamin A and you know it's a poison in high doses, we know mercury and lead are poisons in high doses. We know that they're poisons in almost any dose. So then with vitamin A, if we know it's a poison in a high dose, what is it not a poison at? That's the biggest question. Now, from the World Health Organization, WHO, I know a lot of people are not really big fans of the World Health Organization, and they tend to think that the World Health Organization would mislead us. But what do they say about safe vitamin A dosages during pregnancy and lactation? Oh, there's that lactation thing again. Recommendations and report of a consultation. Okay, quote, experimental studies strongly suggest that retinoic acid, all-trans-retinoic acid, 13-cis-retinoic acid, 4-oxo-all-trans-retinoic acid, and 4-oxo-13-cis-retinoic acid, and not retinol, is the proximate teratogen, end quote. Okay, so remember, alitretinoin causes birth defects, teratogenic, and can cause fetal death. Remember that? Now we have the World Health Organization saying that all trans-retinoic acid and 13-cis-retinoic acid are teratogenic, cause birth defects. Remember that little triangle, that little circle that they kind of went in? They could all exchange and they could turn into each other, but they were all fed by retinol, vitamin A, and retinaldehyde, which is fed by carotenoids and retinol esters. Are you seeing this here? You are making these things in your body. Vitamin A that you absorb eventually turns into these retinoic acids. Next quote, the potential for human teratogenicity from excess maternal consumption of preformed vitamin A is based on the unequivocal demonstration of human teratogenicity of 13-cis-retinoic acid, isotretinoin, when it is taken during early pregnancy, end quote. I hope you understand the seriousness of unequivocally demonstrated. What they're saying is there is no doubt that Accutane, 13-cis-retinoic acid, causes birth defects. Part of all the vitamin A you eat turns into this poison. It turns into one of those 3 birth defect causing poisons. One of those 3, you're going to get it in one of those 3, or it's going to jump between them. That's the metabolism of vitamin A. So from the World Health Organization report continued, we have, quote, isotretinoin causes a characteristic pattern of spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, premature delivery, and malformations that involve the central nervous system, craniofacial, and cardiac development. Craniofacial malformations, tongue ties, lip ties, cleft palate, cleft lip. Craniofacial. Continuing, additional adverse outcomes of pregnancy, although less severe, have been reported when isotretinoin was used exclusively during the fetal period of development, beginning more than 60 days after conception. Thus, there is no safe time during pregnancy when a high dose of vitamin A might be given without putting a fetus at some risk, except during the first 15 days after conception, end quote. Well, if you want to take a risk in those first 15 days of conception with a fat-soluble vitamin that stores in your body, it's still going to be there 15 days after conception. If you want to take that when there's no safe time, that's, hey, go right ahead. I mean, I can't stop you. You can believe whatever people on the internet you want, okay? No safe time. You remember those multivitamins? No safe time. Let's put vitamin A in prenatals. Should either be a massive lawsuit or scientists coming out and saying something. Why am I the only one out there saying this, other than maybe Grant Genereux and Anthony Mawson and a couple of other people who have came after us? Now we're going to go into the summary of anti-fertility effects of vitamin A in humans. So these are all the things we covered. We have miscarriage, aka spontaneous abortion. We have premature delivery, lower sperm motility, higher luteinizing hormone, which is not desirable, erectile dysfunction of multiple types, decreased libido, vulvovaginal dryness, testicular pain, retrograde ejaculation, congenital birth defects, or aka malformations, aka abnormalities, aka anomalies, which means vitamin A is a teratogen or teratogenic. We have birth defects in the central nervous system, neural crest defects, neural tube defects, and spina bifida, urinary tract anomalies, cardiac malformations, which is the heart, or fetal cardiopathy. That's basically diseases of the heart in newborns, or in the fetus, sorry, in the fetus, even in the fetus, they're not even out yet. Craniofacial malformations, cleft palate, cleft lip, and that would also include tongue ties and lip ties. Here's just a really interesting coincidence I thought I'd bring up about infertility and vitamin A. So birth control in the research is known to raise your vitamin A levels. This is a review paper. Vitamin A, pregnancy, and oral contraceptives. Quote, it has been shown that women receiving oral contraceptives have increased levels of serum vitamin A. Doesn't mean they're eating more, it's raising the levels in their blood. High vitamin A levels may constitute a teratogenic hazard, and it has been suggested that women who conceive soon after discontinuing oral contraceptive therapy may be especially at risk to this hazard, end quote. So let's just do some connecting here. Birth control is intended to induce infertility in women. That's what it does, right? It's inducing hopefully only temporary infertility. That's what it does. That's why you're taking it. Birth control has been shown to increase women's vitamin A levels in the research since 1975. Bet you never heard about that. And vitamin A toxicity, as I've thoroughly demonstrated here, has been shown to be connected to infertility. Do you see the connections between vitamin A and birth control and infertility here? Do you really think this is a coincidence? Or is the vitamin A part precisely part of the birth control mechanism of how it works? And I have an entire video dedicated to birth control and vitamin A. It's probably an hour of all the research connecting the two things, how vitamin A is increased by birth control in the system. Take it at your own risk. So in conclusion, what have we shown regarding vitamin A? In our reviews, we went over how natural and synthetic function exactly the same. Toxicity-wise, we've gone over the very real epidemic of vitamin A toxicity worldwide. We have gone over how the standard blood test for vitamin A will not show the liver's level of stored toxicity at all. And we have gone over how absorbed vitamin A turns into the exact same retinoic acids, the ones known to be birth defect inducing as Accutane, Retin A, and alitretinoin, and thus can cause exactly the same side effects. Don't delude yourself. Don't let other people fool you. The research is quite clear that vitamin A has been strongly linked to many anti-fertility, anti-sexual function, and pro-birth defect effects in both humans and animals. So maybe you have some of these issues. Maybe you've noticed it in your lack of fertility, or that your kid after kid getting smaller and sicker or having more issues. Or maybe you took vitamin A at some point and that kid has big problems and then you stop taking it and your other kids don't have as many problems. Maybe after you have what looks like a fairly healthy child, and then during nursing the kid goes sick. Okay, these are all things that would demonstrate. Maybe you've taken birth control in the past. These are all things that can be indicators of obvious vitamin A toxicity that won't show up in the serum retinol test. So the way out of this vitamin A toxicity, this is what I specialize in. It is simple, it is not easy. It involves getting years, typically decades. For a woman trying to get pregnant, it's typically going to be decades of vitamin A toxicity in your system of this poison out of your tissues, okay? My best work in fertility and other health issues is done via individualized work where I work directly with the person. We use blood tests and we use hair tests to assess your specific toxicity levels and nutrient deficiencies. So we want to bring up the good, we want to bring down the bad. It's a very simple approach. Simple, not always easy, okay? So I have the basic vitamin A detox program at nutritiondetective.work. This is a do-it-yourself program. This is something that I have put together so people who want to do it on their own or can't afford to work with me directly, so you can do it there. It is not as beneficial or effective as working with me directly. I'll be quite honest about that. That makes sense though. In this basic vitamin A detox program, I covered important topics like low vitamin A foods, the easy part. Lots of people on the internet are giving away free low vitamin A food lists. Many of them are wrong because they don't know enough. This is the easy part of this whole thing. But we're trying to get decades of stored vitamin A out of you. Putting less in is the first step, but we need to get it out of you. How do we do this? I go over specific foods to avoid, many of which people like to think are healthy. Let me just back up 1 second. If all these alternative health experts and all these people know so much, you think about some of the most health nutty people you know. Maybe you're one of them. They're usually sicker than the people who aren't doing much about their health. And maybe you notice yourself or these other health nut friends you have who are eating tons of superfoods, and they're eating the rainbow, and they're doing nose to tail and carnivore and eating all these vitamin A foods, and they're getting worse and worse and worse, and they keep making up new excuses week after week as to why they're getting sicker. They're simply making themselves more toxic, okay? And a lot of the other foods they're eating that they've been told are healthy are slowing down. They actually don't realize it's in the research. Everything I say is backed in research. I have references for everything, but these foods slow down their detox pathways through the liver. So we stop eating those foods and the liver starts running faster. It's amazing. These are not provided by the typical vitamin A detox people out on the internet, okay? I go over nutrients that specifically help your body to speed up the liver's process of detoxifying vitamin A and many other things. The best work on this is done through testing. very simple. We test, we don't guess, then we address. That's my tagline. If you're not testing, you're just guessing, okay? And then we go over the most important part of all of this is the approaches to speed up the excretion, the actual exiting of the vitamin A and other toxins from your body. That's what we cover. This is a holistic approach. We are hitting every single part of the process. And that's the do-it-yourself. People who work with me directly get access to the basic vitamin A detox free as part of a package. Otherwise, people can do it on their own. One of the big benefits of the vitamin A detox program network, it's a mighty network. It's a little mini social network place, not Facebook. But there's the benefit of the vitamin A detox community there, which is at last count was over 600 people working on this together and discussing things and asking questions and getting answers. And I'm adding stuff there often. So anyway, that is how I can help you if you're out there trying to regain your fertility, regain your health. If you have fertility or sexual dysfunction problems, you probably have other health issues. And we work on all of them at the same time because they are all connected. I don't give you more drugs and other things to try to force you. Think about when you do modern fertility treatments. They are giving your body drugs and giving your body treatments to try to force you to become pregnant. Forcing the body to do anything never ends well. And that's just the way it is. So, you know where to find me. I will have a variation of this video on some of my more alternative video channels. I'll put those links down in the stuff below. This is from Grant Genereux, the guy who introduced me to vitamin A toxicity, of ggenereux.blog. And he has 3 free ebooks about his adventure through vitamin A toxicity and detoxing himself. He is the guy who taught me about this, and then I took it to another level. This is his quote. Dr. Garrett Smith is on the forefront of investigating the vitamin A toxicity issue. He has in-depth knowledge of the underlying mechanisms and the insidious nature of the condition. He has been researching all aspects of this condition and has the most experience of anyone that I'm aware of in developing protocols for helping people effectively and safely navigate the tricky recovery process. He's also brought a lot of attention to this important topic, and I'm very grateful for everything he's doing. End quote. Thank you, Grant, very much for that. I can never thank Grant enough for introducing me to this topic, and it has become my life's work. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all check out my other videos. I will see you later.